ever wonder, like, who's really calling the shots in the global economy right now? Who are, like, the real titans and what's driving their success?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it?
Totally. So today we're going to do a deep dive into this fascinating snapshot of the world's financial giants as of March 2025. You shared some really insightful data with me, and we're going to break it all down for the listeners. Not just like names and numbers, but like, the big picture stuff, the forces that are shaping the economic landscape, the things that impact you every day, even if you don't realize it.
Absolutely. We're going to be focusing on the top richest companies globally, examining their market capitalization, that's essentially their overall worth, the industries they represent,
Yeah.
and most importantly, the key factors that are driving their success. The information you provided gives us a really interesting lens through which to view the current financial world.
Exactly. So the mission for us today is to pull out like the most crucial insights from this data. Who's leading the pack? What's fueling their growth? And maybe most importantly, what does it tell us about like the big economic shifts that are happening right now? We want to go beyond just like reading a list. We want to understand the why behind these figures. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the current champ, the one everyone probably has an idea about. It looks like Apple Inc. is holding on to the title of the richest company in the world, at least as of March 2025.
That's right. As of March, their market capitalization stood at a mind-boggling $3.63 trillion.
Trillion. It's like almost hard to even imagine that much money. It's like, what kind of influence does a company with that kind of value have, globally? So what is it that keeps Apple at the top? It can't just be the logo and, like how their stuff looks, right? It's got to be more to it.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely more than just aesthetics. Their financial strength comes from, well, a really powerful combination of factors. Consistent iPhone sales are a major foundation. I mean, there's always a new iPhone, right? And then you have the Mac computers, which continue to have a dedicated following, particularly among creatives and professionals. But increasingly, it's their services division that's becoming a major revenue driver. Things like iCloud, Apple Music, and of course, the App Store. That's a huge one. And then what's interesting is their continued, although maybe sometimes less talked about, push into AI-powered features. Those are integrated right into their devices.
Oh, that's true. I mean, think about it. The advanced image processing in their cameras, that makes your photos look amazing. Or the predictive text, it like learns how you write. That's all powered by on-device AI.
Exactly. It's not just some distant, cloud-based intelligence. It's part of the hardware and software you use every day.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's worth pointing out that their resilience is impressive. Even with all the global economic stuff happening, they've managed to stay on top, which says a lot about, I guess, their customers' loyalty and the power of the Apple brand, in our lives.
Absolutely. That brand loyalty is like a shield for them, a
Yeah.
real competitive advantage. But while Apple is holding the top spot, it looks like they have some serious competition. NVIDIA, their growth is, well, it's pretty remarkable.
I think remarkable is an understatement. I mean, look at these numbers. NVIDIA has just blown past the $3 trillion market cap mark.
It really is incredible. It shows how quickly the tech landscape can shift, when a fundamental technology takes off.
Absolutely. So what's driving this rocket ship? It can't just be gamers buying graphics cards anymore, right? What's the bigger story here?
Right, it's much bigger than that now. Their game business is still huge, don't get me wrong, but the real driver here is the massive growth of AI applications. We're talking about artificial intelligence being used in pretty much every sector you can think of. And NVIDIA's GPUs, their graphics processing units, they've become absolutely essential for AI. These chips, they're designed in a way that makes them really good at the kind of calculations that AI needs, the really complex stuff. So they're much more efficient for this kind of work than traditional CPUs, the ones you find in most computers.
So like all those massive AI models we keep hearing about and all that cloud computing power needed to run them, NVIDIA is like the backbone of it all.
Exactly. Major tech companies like, Microsoft, Google, even those cutting-edge research labs like OpenAI, a lot of them are relying heavily on NVIDIA's technology. It's like the foundation for a lot of the AI development that's happening. And yeah, this kind of makes you think, right, if so many companies are depending on one company's products, does that create like a potential vulnerability? What if there's a shortage or something?
That's a really good point. Something to think about. Okay, so we've got Apple, the established king, and NVIDIA, the rising star powered by this AI revolution. So if we take a step back and look at the whole picture, what does this tell us about the economy? What industries are really driving things right now?
Well, when you look at the top ranks, There's no denying the dominance of the technology sector. I mean, it's pretty clear. We're talking about Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Alphabet, that's Google, of course, and Meta.
So that's like a huge chunk of the top spots, all tech companies. What's the common thread there? What connects them all?
Well, their combined impact on the global economy is massive.
Yeah.
And it's mainly driven by, the continued advancements in AI, the increasing reliance on cloud computing, all those services that we use without even realizing it, and of course, the ongoing power of digital advertising. I mean, let's face it, that's how a lot of these companies make their money. These technologies, AI, cloud computing, digital advertising, they're so fundamental to how businesses operate, how we interact with each other, how information flows in the world. Their influence is huge, both economically and, socially.
Yeah, you're right. It makes you think about, the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of these few tech giants. What does that mean for competition? What does it mean for the future of innovation?
Absolutely important questions to consider. Now, it's not all tech at the top, right? There's at least one major player that stands out, a company that's not really a tech company in the traditional sense.
Right, you're talking about Saudi Aramco, I bet.
Exactly. They're still up there with a market cap of around $1.8 trillion.
That's the oil and gas giant, right? So even with all the focus on tech and the future and all that, traditional energy sources still hold a lot of power, at least financially. What's keeping them so high up in the rankings?
Well, their profitability mainly comes from their control over these massive oil reserves.
Yeah.
They have access to some of the largest and cheapest to extract oil in the world. And oil and natural gas, those are still essential to the global economy. Transportation, industry, electricity generation, so much depends on them. So their scale of operation is just huge. But what's interesting is that they are starting to shift their strategy a bit. They're seeing the writing on the wall with the global push for renewable energy. So they're investing in things like hydrogen production and cleaner alternatives.
So even the giants of the old energy world are having to adapt and look towards a future where fossil fuels might not be king anymore. It's interesting, we've been talking a lot about market capitalization. For folks who maybe aren't super familiar with financial terms, can we just quickly explain what that actually means?
Sure, no problem. So market capitalization, or market cap, it's basically just the total value of a company's outstanding shares. All the shares that are out there owned by investors. You calculate it by taking the current stock price and multiplying that by the total number of shares.
Got it. So it's like a snapshot, like a real-time picture of what the market as a whole thinks a company is worth.
Exactly. And that's why it's used to measure the overall financial strength and size of a company. It's also how we compare and rank them globally, which is what we're looking at today.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, going back to NVIDIA, their massive growth really highlights just how powerful this AI revolution is. Like hitting a $3 trillion market cap driven mostly by the demand for one technology. That's pretty incredible. So what makes their AI chips so essential? Why are they like the go-to option right now?
Well, NVIDIA has really positioned itself as the leader in this area, these specialized processing units. And they become absolutely crucial for, well, pretty much every aspect of AI, you know, from the initial research, developing the algorithms, to things like self-driving cars, to powering the massive data centers that run all this AI stuff, even to the advanced graphics we see in gaming. It all relies on these chips.
So if a company or a research lab or something wants to build a sophisticated AI model, they basically need NVIDIA's hardware to do it efficiently.
Yeah, in most cases, especially when you're talking about the cutting-edge stuff, yes.
Mm.
That's why you see companies like Microsoft, Tesla, OpenAI, Google, all relying on NVIDIA's processors. They're powering the AI initiatives that are happening right now, and probably the ones that will impact our lives in the future in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Right. It's like they're providing the infrastructure for this whole AI revolution. And AI's impact is much broader than just, the companies that make these chips. It's changing how companies across all sorts of industries create value and deliver products and services to us.
Oh, absolutely. AI is really shaking things up, and it's creating huge value for a lot of companies.
We've mentioned a few examples, but can you give us some specifics? Like, how is AI actually boosting companies' bottom lines? And, how does that trickle down and affect you and me?
Sure. AI is revolutionizing things in a few key ways. First, it's automating a lot of processes. That leads to greater efficiency, and it can reduce costs for companies. And those savings can sometimes be passed on to consumers, lower prices or better services. Second, it's allowing companies to personalize customer experiences, using AI to make recommendations, or to create more intuitive interfaces, which makes interacting with these companies and their products much easier. And finally, these improvements often translate directly into higher revenue and a stronger market position for those companies.
Can you give us a few concrete examples? You mentioned a couple earlier, but it would be great to hear more.
Okay, so think about Microsoft, for example. They have integrated their AI-powered Copilot assistant into Microsoft 365, their Office suite. That boosts productivity for users, making those tools even more valuable. Google's using their Gemini AI models to constantly improve their search engine. That helps us find information more easily, it attracts more users, and that brings in more advertisers. And then you have Tesla. Their work on AI-driven self-driving technology is a huge selling point for their cars. And it could potentially be a major source of revenue in the future if autonomous ride-sharing really takes off, which it very well might. We're also seeing AI being used more and more for targeted advertising, the ads you see online that are tailored to your interests. And there are AI-powered tools for content creation, writing, music, even art. And of course, AI is playing a huge role in cloud computing, which is kind of the foundation of so much of the digital world we live in.
Right. Speaking of cloud computing, our data shows Amazon Web Services, AWS, as a real leader in that space.
Oh yeah, AWS is a powerhouse.
Mhm.
It's not just a little side project for Amazon. It consistently brings in over 70% of Amazon's total operating profits. They're really early to the cloud computing game, and they've built this massive, sophisticated infrastructure. A lot of the internet and a lot of the digital services we use run on their servers.
They're not the only player in cloud computing, though, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud, they're major competitors, and they're all offering these really advanced AI-driven cloud solutions. This combination of AI and cloud computing is really important because to train these complex AI models, you need to process huge amounts of data, and that requires powerful, scalable cloud platforms.
Makes sense. Now let's switch gears back to Apple for a second. We talked about their on-device AI, but their approach to AI is kind of different from some of the other tech giants we've been discussing.
It is, yeah. They tend to focus more on on-device processing, meaning that a lot of the AI computations happen right there on your iPhone or iPad, instead of sending your data to the cloud. Their big focus here is on privacy and security, keeping your data on your device.
So things like facial recognition to unlock your phone or the photo and video editing stuff, that's all happening locally.
Yep, a lot of it is. And beyond those everyday features, Apple is investing heavily in AI for some really ambitious projects, like their work on self-driving cars, Project Titan, and their augmented reality and virtual reality headset, the Vision Pro. Those are some pretty big bets on the future of AI.
And on the other side of the spectrum, Microsoft seems to be going all in on cloud-connected AI, especially through their partnership with OpenAI.
Right. Their collaboration with OpenAI, the folks who created ChatGPT, is a big part of their strategy. That partnership has allowed them to quickly integrate AI into a lot of their products, like the Copilot Assistant in Microsoft 365, their Azure cloud services, even their Bing search engine. They're trying to make Bing a more powerful competitor to Google, and AI is a big part of that. This cloud-centric AI strategy is definitely a major factor in their continued success.
It's interesting to see these different approaches to AI. They both seem to be working well for these companies, but in different ways. It makes you wonder, from an investment perspective, what are the opportunities here?
Well, if you're thinking about investing, the data gives us some clues. NVIDIA, with its position in the AI chip market, it's seen as a promising investment, though maybe a bit riskier because the AI landscape is still evolving so rapidly. Apple and Microsoft, on the other hand, are often considered safer, more stable, long-term investments. They have strong brands, diverse revenue streams, and a history of solid financial performance. For investors who are really looking for stability and diversification, Berkshire Hathaway is often seen as a good choice. And then for those who are looking for high growth potential, Tesla, with their focus on disruptive tech, and again, NVIDIA, with its central role in the AI boom, are worth considering.
Berkshire Hathaway, that's Warren Buffett's company, right? It's interesting that an investment company is right up there with these huge tech giants. What's their secret?
Berkshire Hathaway has built its wealth by being really diversified. They own a whole bunch of companies outright, Geico Insurance, Dairy Queen, BNSF Railway, and many others. But they also own big chunks of other publicly traded companies like Apple, Coca-Cola, and Bank of America. This approach, spreading their investments across so many different industries, has made them incredibly stable and resilient over the years.
And then we have Tesla, which is now the most valuable car company in the world, although their valuation is still lower than some of the top tech companies. What's driving their success?
Tesla's valuation, which is somewhere around $1.27 trillion right now, comes from their leading role in the electric vehicle market, their advances in self-driving technology, which could really change the game for transportation, and their growing business in energy storage. Those Powerwall batteries for homes and the bigger Megapack systems. But their stock price can be a bit more volatile than some of the more established companies. That just reflects the risks and the intense competition in these new, rapidly growing industries.
And what about Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook? They've had a lot of ups and downs lately, but are they still a major player financially?
Oh yeah, definitely. They're still in the top 10 with a market cap of roughly $1.65 trillion. Their main source of revenue is still advertising, but they're investing heavily in AI, virtual reality with their MetaQuest headsets, and their long-term vision for the metaverse. Those are all areas where they see future growth potential.
And finally, there's Alphabet, Google's parent company. How are they staying at the top in such a competitive landscape?
Alphabet is a really interesting case. Their success comes from a few key areas. First, they dominate digital advertising through Google Search and YouTube. Those are massive revenue generators. Second, their cloud computing division, Google Cloud, is growing quickly as more companies move their operations online. And third, they're really committed to AI research and development. Their Gemini AI models are some of the most advanced out there. They also have key assets like the Android operating system, which powers most of the world's smartphones. All of that combined give them a lot of financial strength and a bright future.
So looking ahead, who do you see as the most likely contenders to maybe knock Apple off that top spot?
Based on current trends, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and even Apple itself seem like the most likely candidates. NVIDIA, with their dominance in AI chips, they have huge potential for growth. Microsoft's aggressive AI investments and their reach across different markets make them a serious player. And Apple, they've shown that they can innovate and move into new product categories, like their AI-powered devices and their move into mixed reality with the Vision Pro headset. So those three, they're definitely ones to watch.
And the data suggests that we might even see some brand new companies breaking into the top 10 in the future. What are some of the emerging industries or disruptors that we should keep an eye on?
That's right. The pace of innovation is so fast that we could definitely see some new faces at the top. Startups in AI, like OpenAI and Anthropic, they've shown how quickly a company can grow and disrupt an entire industry. Biotech is another area to watch, with all the advances in gene editing, personalized medicine, new drug discoveries, and the push for clean energy. That's going to create huge opportunities for companies in solar, wind, and energy storage. Further down the line, we might see companies in quantum computing, robotics, maybe even brain-computer interfaces becoming major players. It's a really exciting time to be watching all this unfold.
It's not just about technology, though, right? World events can also play a big role in how well these companies do.
Absolutely. Geopolitical events, things like trade wars, sanctions, recessions, changes in regulations, those can have a big impact on the stock market and on the valuations of these big companies. For instance, if there are restrictions placed on exporting advanced chips, that could really hurt NVIDIA's business. And if oil prices fluctuate wildly, that's going to affect Saudi Aramco's profits. So those things are always in play.
And speaking of Saudi Aramco, their long-term prospects are kind of uncertain, right? Given this global shift towards cleaner energy, how are they adapting to that?
Well, right now, they're still a financial powerhouse. But their business model, based on oil and gas, it's not very sustainable in the long run, especially with everyone moving towards renewable energy sources. They realize this, so they're investing a lot of money in hydrogen energy and carbon capture technologies. It's an attempt to diversify their business and prepare for the future. Only time will tell how successful they'll be.
So one last question, looking way ahead, what industries do you think are most likely to produce the next generation of trillion-dollar companies, the ones that might even surpass the current leaders?
It's hard to say for sure, but AI is almost certainly going to continue to create huge value and probably more trillion-dollar companies. As AI gets more sophisticated and its applications become more widespread, it's going to touch every part of our lives. Quantum computing, that's another one with huge potential. Still early days, but it could really revolutionize a lot of industries. Biotech is another strong contender. And of course, the shift to renewable energy is going to create massive new companies and massive new wealth. We might even see some surprising winners emerge, in areas like fusion energy, advanced robotics, or even things like brain-computer interfaces.
So, to sum up this deep dive into the world's richest companies, it looks like Apple is still on top. But NVIDIA's rapid growth, fueled by the AI revolution, is definitely something to watch closely. The technology sector is clearly the dominant force right now, but even traditional giants like Saudi Aramco are having to adapt and evolve. And the future is likely to be shaped by continued advancements in AI and the rise of other disruptive technologies. It's an exciting and uncertain time, but one thing's for sure, the companies we've discussed today are playing a major role in shaping the world we live in.
That's a great summary. I think it's so important for everyone to understand not just who these companies are,
Wow.
but also what they're doing and how they're shaping the future. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, I'm going to leave our listeners with one final thought to chew on. We've talked about these powerful companies, these giants of the global economy. They're driving innovation, they're influencing our lives in countless ways. But which one of them, do you think, has the greatest potential to not just stay at the top, but to really change the world as we know it in the next decade? It's something worth thinking about.
It really is.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great discussion.